Well, hello, boys and girls. Welcome to Storytime with Papa Henry. Today we are going to the second chapter in the book called Captain Daly's Crew at Thunderhead Lake. This chapter is called Baffling Explosion. Captain Daly started the motors and we pulled away from the unfriendly place, heading up the narrow, twisting Snake River. Pudge, squatting cross-legged like an Indian on top of the pilot house, said, "There's some dark, mysterious reason why Mr. Snapper doesn't want us to camp on Thunderhead Lake. And I wouldn't be surprised if it was his plane that swooped down on us last night." "Why, if that fat man got in a plane, it couldn't lift off the ground," Slim snorted. "I'm serious," Pudge insisted earnestly. "I'm Slim," Slim said as solemnly. Chuck joined in the kidding. "I'm Charles." "I'm Gary," I piped up. "Captain Daly, who are you?" Slim called. The captain laughed, then added, "Boys, it does seem strange Mr. Snapper should act the way he did. I'm not sure but what Pudge may have an idea there about some sort of mystery." "Maybe there's a secret gold mine," suggested Pudge. "If he knew where a gold mine was located, I think he'd buy a belt instead of tying his pants with an old piece of rope," Chuck said. "He probably dresses that way to fool people into thinking he's poor," Slim suggested. We stopped thinking about the man when we saw a big sign hanging on a piece of wire strung between two trees. "Thunderhead Reservation. This property has been set aside for an animal and bird haven. Anyone trespassing without permission will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law." "I'm sure glad we have a permit, Captain," Slim chuckled after reading the sign aloud. "I wouldn't want to spend my life in a dungeon for trespassing." Pudge looked at Slim to see if he were fooling, but Slim kept a straight face when he asked the captain, "Does that permit include 13-year-olds? "Aw, cut it out!" Pudge exclaimed when he saw the captain wink. After we passed under the sign, the country became wild and gave a fellow the feeling he was in the wilderness. We had to cut our speed because of fallen trees along the edge of the river. We saw a beautiful wood duck with her 3 half-grown ducklings. They rose from the water when they spotted us. "Wood ducks are almost wiped out by hunters a few years ago. Several nature lovers had a law passed to protect them. Now they're on the increase," the captain told us. We puffed and tugged up the river for about 8 miles and saw all kinds of birds along the banks. I guess it was about 11 when we rounded a curve and came upon a lake. "Here we are, boys," the captain said. He pointed to a towering peak to the north. "The lake gets its name from that mountain. The Indians called it Thunderhead because of the sudden storms that sweep down her slopes." The boat followed the north shore where steep overhanging cliffs caught the morning sun. The south bank was a wall of pine, maple, and oak trees. The lake seemed like a bluish-green mirror and reflected the mountains and trees. Overhead, a flock of tiny, fluffy white clouds floated by like lambs playing in a field of blue. We all sat on deck, feasting our eyes, when the captain spoke. "I'm reminded of what the Lord tells us. Rejoice evermore. It should be easy for us to be joyful in a glorious place." "Seeing all these wonderful things makes me glad I know the Creator," Chuck added. Halfway down the lake, the captain swung the wheel and headed toward the wooded section. "We'll choose a camping site now and set up the tents," he said. There were any number of spots, but the one we picked seemed lovelier than the rest. The captain anchored Noah's Ark several hundred feet from shore. We clambered aboard the rowboat and headed for a long pine-covered point extending into the water. Boulders rose from the water. and I knew there were plenty of fish. We dragged the boat ashore and scurried up the bank. "Isn't this keen?" Pudge sighed, flopping down on a floor of sweet-smelling pine needles. "You mean, isn't this keen?" Slim corrected. "As long as I'm away from the English teacher, I say, ain't this keen?" Pudge retorted. I knew how Pudge felt. It was something way down deep inside that seemed full of happiness and joy and made you act careless and free. We set up 2 tents and gathered firewood while Sniffles raced after the chipmunks. There must have been dozens of them living on our peninsula. "Chuck and Slim, you take the shovel and dig a fair-sized pit we can put our food in to keep cool," the captain directed. Then he said to Pudge and me, "You dig trenches around the tents, so in case of rain we won't be flooded out. I'll row to the boat and bring the rest of the camping equipment." By 5 o'clock, we had a snug camp. It was protected from the hot sun by the tall pines. "How about trying to get a few fish for supper?" Slim suggested. We rigged up fishing rods and worked along the rocky shore. Chuck was the first to sing out, "Got one!" It was a 10-inch rock bass. A moment later, I had a big flat bluegill flopping on shore. Pudge crawled out on a half-sunken tree trunk and dropped his line underneath. "Popo!" He had another rock bass. "Look, fellas!" he called, holding up the fish. It sure was a beauty. But I didn't get much of a look because Pudge slipped and fell into the water. Bubbling and puffing, he sputtered to the surface and started to swim to shore. He stopped and ducked under. I thought for a second he was in trouble, but up he came with an excited look on his face. "Hey, fellas, there's something down here." Under he popped again, and when he came up, he had a white piece of cloth. He splashed ashore, dripping like a half-drowned kitten, still clinging to the cloth. "It's a clue to the mystery!" he almost screamed in excitement. "What mystery?" Slim wanted to know. "The mystery of Thunderhead Lake!" Pudge exploded. "I didn't know about any mystery," Slim insisted. Pudge let his voice sink to a squeaky whisper. "You just wait, Slim. You'll see." The cloth was about 3 feet square, with ribbed edges except for one side. This side was hemmed, and there were several slender pieces of heavy cord attached to it. "Let's take it back to camp and show it to the captain," Chuck suggested. We caught a few more fish and headed back to the tents. We stopped to watch the colors reflected on the lake. Suddenly, from the mountain behind us, came a tremendous explosion. I told you there was a mystery here," Pudge breathed. The next chapter is called Little Rufus.